Well, I don't really like labeling me, but I guess if you were to put a label on Life Undeferred and what it stands for and, the book, I guess you could probably label it in the world of personal development. Never thought I would be kind of in that space, so to speak, but that's probably where I land. And since I'm in that space, especially in the last couple of years since I kind of started my own reinvention, and of course wrote the book Life Undeferred, and now have since launched this podcast, The Breakthrough Effect, where I'm really helping people explore what is inside, extracting human greatness, tapping the untapped potential of human beings, which I guess would all be encapsulated in personal development. There's some terms that get thrown around a lot. And one of those words is consciousness. Prior to 3 years ago, that's a word that I probably never used and certainly probably never even heard of a lot because it never came up because I really wasn't in this space. I remember the first time I actually heard it, I was at a conference in New York one time and the speaker was talking about levels of consciousness. I remember writing it down kind of with a question mark, not really understanding what it means. And to be honest with you, I probably still don't fully understand it here now and several years later. And there are plenty of definitions as to what consciousness is. If you ask 10 people, you'll probably get 10 different answers, but probably somewhat similar, right? It's how we think. It's our mindset. I've heard other people say it's kind of your awareness. There's one definition that I really like, and this is the one I land on. It's the one I want to share with you today, and more importantly, I want to share really, again, the depth of what it means and how you can apply it to your own life. And the definition that I like goes like this. It's the set of beliefs that you choose to be true about your life. It's your truth. I really don't like that statement. It got politicized here in the last couple of years. But it really is. It's your set of beliefs that you choose to believe about your life, about your past, your present, your future, your abilities, your calling, your destiny, your trajectory. It's all of that combined into one. It's kind of the lens. It's the goggles that you put on to look at your life and to look at the world around you. This set of beliefs will dictate a lot of things. It's going to dictate your trajectory. It's going to dictate your relationships. It will dictate how you act and react with the world. It will dictate what you feel about yourself, how you look at yourself, how you look at, again, your past, your present, and your future. How do we land on this set of beliefs? How does one form consciousness or this, again, set of beliefs? Well, our past, our childhood, the way we were raised, organized religion, past traumas, something somebody said that could have been positive, that formed a belief about yourself, or something negative. Maybe it was something that somebody said in jest, and it landed on a heart that was fertile soil, and it may have happened a long time ago, and you have created this set of beliefs around that particular statement that maybe was said by someone 40 years ago, and they don't even remember saying it. But here's the deal. Your consciousness, your set of beliefs creates the reality by which you live. That's a really important point. And that's what makes consciousness, this concept, this conversation about consciousness so important. Because your set of beliefs will dictate the reality that you live in. By the way, your reality, the world as you see it, where you stand today, is merely a reflection of what you choose to believe about this world and about yourself. This is all involved in consciousness, all encapsulated in this word consciousness, and what you choose to be true, lowercase t. Here's the problem. Your truth is always a lower version than the truth, capital T. It's always a lower version. The key is, can we upgrade? Because that's the good news. Even though your consciousness, and by the way, mine as well, is a lower version than the truth, we have the ability to delete those untruths or those lower truths about ourselves and upgrade those with something that is more clear or more in line with the truth. And every time we do that, our consciousness increases, and all of a sudden the way by which we can operate with this world increases and elevates and expands. as well. I'm going to get really personal with you here for just a second. For those of you who know me personally, maybe have been following me for a while, I actually lost my mother several months ago in March of 2025. She was 77 years old. She struggled with, she didn't struggle with, but she had dementia, Alzheimer's, and eventually heart failure, which led to her passing again early in the year in 2025. And for those of you who, again, know me, you probably know some of my story. I explained some of this in my book, but I had a very interesting relationship with my mom. My parents divorced when I was 8 years old. My dad lived several states away. I was kind of raised an only child. My older brother was 10 years older than me. And so by the time I was 8, he was 18. So he was kind of out of the house. So again, I was kind of raised by a single mom, just her and I. We lived in a trailer park in southwestern Minnesota. I didn't have a lot of money, which was neither here nor there. I was always provided for. I do want to honor my parents. I was very, very loved. I will say that. But my mom struggled fiercely with depression, anxiety, and low self-esteem. She was the youngest of four. She came from a farming family in South Dakota. Her dad was an alcoholic. She was never told that she was loved by her father. And so she had a massive hole in her heart, obviously not literally, but figuratively. And so as she was into adulthood, having children and being raised by me, I was the one kind of parenting the parent. And again, with all due respect to my mother, but that's kind of what I was doing. I was the cheerleader. I was the emotional cheerleader in the house starting at 8, 9, 10 years old. I kind of felt like I was somewhat the emotional janitor in my house. I had to deal with the heavy emotional toll of adults trying to navigate through life, whether I really liked it or not. But I can remember my mom always crying. That was really one of my more frequent memories. And again, no disrespect. We had a lot of good times, and I was very well loved by my mother, and I miss her dearly. But there was a lot of crying, and I was the one trying to tell her the truth. I was the one saying, Mom, if you could just, let's get a good night's sleep tonight. Let's get up in the morning. You go to work, and it's going to be a better day. That was kind of the way that I was living my life since I was a very young child. And as she struggled with depression and anxiety throughout the years, my phone rang a lot. I was her go-to. I was her person. You know what I mean? I think a lot of people can probably resonate with that, where you're a parent's person or you're a friend's person. When the darkness came up, which often did in my mom's life, my phone would ring. And I could tell right off, even like the tone of her voice, I could tell that she really didn't know why she was calling. Let me rephrase that. She knew why she was calling. She really didn't have an excuse. She tried to come up with an excuse that she was calling, but ultimately I knew. It was just she felt dark, she felt empty, and she was looking for the truth. I don't think she ever would admit that, but that's what she was looking for. And she would get it with me. I was always trying to give her the truth. What is the true reality of her life? What is actually true? She would say things, and I remember a time I'd often rebuttal. And again, this was over the course of decades, tens of thousands of conversations. How many hours on the phone, I don't know. But she would say something, and I'd always say, even 20 years ago when I was in my teens and 20s, I would say, Mom, is that really true? So at the end of the day, whether you admit it or not, whether you know it or not, what you're actually seeking for in this life is truth, capital T. We're all searching for it because we ultimately know the truth is what sets us free and what actually brings us peace in life, which is really a main reason why we're here. And so, again, my mom was always kind of just like a 1 out of 10. Her baseline was a 1 out of 10. And she'd talk to me and I'd bring it up to a 2. And eventually the next day or 48 hours later, it'd go back down to a 1. And then she would call me, and this is kind of the way our relationship worked. I was always trying to get her to see something that was true about her life that she did not believe for herself. Here's one thing that I'll mention about my mom, and this breaks my heart to admit this, but she did not love herself. She hated herself. If I have to be blatantly honest, she hated herself. Near the end of her life, I would go and visit her before she was moved into a memory care facility, and I would find pictures in her drawer, in her cupboards, that I had sent her of her with my kids, her and her grandchildren. And she would literally cut her face out of the pictures, which is so sad and heartbreaking for me to talk about on this episode. But that was the truth. She hated even looking at herself. And she was a beautiful woman. If you don't believe me, go back on my LinkedIn page. Go back to March on my Instagram. I did a tribute to her after she passed, and I posted pictures of her when she was young all the way up until the end. And the truth is that she was a beautiful woman. But here is the truth. It wasn't her truth. Her truth was that she was broken, she was ugly, and she was unwanted. And so even as abrasive as she was to me at times throughout my life. In fact, many times I would explain my relationship with my mother to other people, and they would say, I actually commend you for still having a functional relationship with her because she could be so abrasive. I don't want to say abusive, but abrasive. At the end of the day, that's what hurt people do. Hurt people, right? And she was coming from a place of not being whole. And even in her most abrasive times, I tried to always see her the way that our Creator saw her, which was basically a 10 or 12-year-old girl who just wanted to be loved. And so I tried to emulate that love and respond to her from that position. And so we spent a lot of time having these conversations over the years, which ultimately leads to nearing the end of her life. And God opened up a door where she was able to come to my hometown. I spent the last 7 months of her life in a memory care unit, and I was able to visit her frequently, and I was able to talk to her and tell her the truth over the years, even more so, continuing to tell her the truth. And leading up to her final days, in fact, the last 3 days of her life were so sacred and special for me because I was able to be there with her almost the entire time. And she was, not really responding, but I was able just to give her the truth. And literally on March 16th, the day that she passed, I was literally on her bed with my arm around her as she took her last breaths. And in those moments, I was still telling her the truth, capital T. And this is honest to God, true story. I wrote about it. Please go back on my Instagram and LinkedIn. Look at those pictures. Read the article. It's totally true. By the way, she was indeed a beautiful woman. And if you're not following me on Instagram and LinkedIn, please do. I'd love to connect with you. But the moment she took her last breath, I was the only person in the room. And she took her last breath. I said, Mom, now you finally see the truth. Hallelujah. What an honor it was for me to have that assignment, to be the vessel of truth for her. And yet so honored and heartbroken at the same time when she took her last breath to know that she finally then understood the truth. I'm not going to get into it, but I believe once we hit the other side, we will see the truth, capital T. And I try to live my life with respect to the truth on this side while I'm still here. That's another story for another day. So what's the moral of the story? How do we live with the truth, capital T? Why is this whole conversation around consciousness so important? Because whatever you choose to believe about yourself is true. There's a saying that says, as a man thinketh, so it shall be. Whatever you believe to be true, it is. If you think you are destined for the struggle bus, life will be a struggle. If you think that you're a piece of garbage, your life will reflect that. If you think life will never get better, life will never get better. If you think this world is dark and broken and going to heck in a handbasket, your world will do everything it can to prove you correct. Whatever you believe to be true about your life is indeed true. Have you ever heard of the term being thick-headed? Sometimes we say that about people, maybe our parents. Man, they're so thick-headed. What do we really mean by that? Like people, when they've been thinking a certain way and believing things and acting as if for so many years, it's like we get so stuck in our ways, me included, that even though it's so obviously not true to the outside world, to our friends, to our family, to our spouses, but we've been living in it for so long, we're living as if it is indeed capital T true. I challenge you, as we start to land the plane on this show here, to challenge what you believe to be true. What do you believe to be true about your life? What do you believe to be true about your past, about your present, about your future that is not actually true? What are some of these things that you believe, these storylines that keep getting played over and over and over again, albeit not true, you have created entire realities, and worse yet, identities around those non-truths, around those lower truths. Again, the bad news is that it is always a lower version of the truth, but the good news is they can be deleted and they can be upgraded closer to the truth. You want help with this? You've got struggles. You've got a mindset. You've got a truth that you want help deleting. I encourage you to reach out to me. I would love to hear from you. Again, let's connect online. I'm on Instagram and on LinkedIn at Jerrid Sebesta is my handle. My email is Jerrid@JerridSebesta.com. Make sure you spell my name right, Jerrid as in dog, at JerridSebesta.com. I would love to hear from you and help you if I can. Consciousness, whatever you believe to be true about yourself. Thanks for listening today.